Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, my friends, the podcast about all nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, I'm your host, Will, but unfortunately, my illustrious co-host, Blake, was not able to make it today, had some last-minute things come up. But do not fear, because we have our constant villain, Jeremy, making an appearance once more, so please, a round of applause for him. He's a little shy, though, so he may not say anything, but yeah, unfortunately, Blake was not able to be here today, but of course, we still wanted to put something out. So for those of you that have seen our episodes like this before, it's going to be a little different. I obviously won't be able to have my back and forth with Jeremy the same way I would with Blake. So instead of that, we are just going to be doing the recap portion of the show today. And I'll quickly share a few of my own thoughts on the episode, but that will pretty much be it. But hopefully we are back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. But without too much further ado, just a couple of quick announcements here, and that is the final 3 episodes of Legend of Vox Machina drop, well, technically tonight on Wednesday, but we will be having our watch party for them tomorrow on Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And if you aren't Central Time, be sure to join the Discord, because we have an event in there that will convert to your local time zone so you can figure out when that's happening for you. Super excited to see how they wrap up Season 3. And they also officially announced Season 4 has been greenlit, which no surprise to anyone, I'm sure, but they did put that announcement today. So we got more Vox Machina, in the pipeline. Other than that, we have our normal Critical Role live stream watch party tomorrow night as well during Critical Role. And that's the last one of this month. And given where this one ends off, it could be a juicy one. Other than that, we have, I think we have our live stream Friday, but that may be up in the air depending on Blake's circumstances over the next few days. But assuming that happens, it'll be 1 p.m. Central Time, as always, where we just talk about random stuff. Maybe we'll talk about this episode since we didn't get the chance to here today. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Worlds Beyond Number is back. We got to do our plug for that. If you haven't started it yet, you really need to. It has been fantastic. And Chapter 4 now has 2 episodes, and they've both been fantastic. But that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let me dive into this recap of Critical Role episode 111, The 9 Hells. And please bear with me if, I'm good at yapping, but you have to yap a little bit more than normal, so I may need some breathers here and there, but let's dive into it. So this episode picks up with the Bells, Elves, and the Mighty Nine having just met up in this small town where they're about to take the portal in the lake to Ruidus. Mighty Nine is basically going to escort Bells, Hells until the point where their missions diverge. So this entire episode was such a joy, but also a chaos, because we have the cast playing both of their campaign counterparts. Matt just basically took a back seat for the majority of this episode. He didn't play the previous campaign members like he used to. Everybody just was constantly swapping back and forth. And it was so much fun. And there were so many amazing little moments between the different characters that I couldn't possibly do justice. And we'd be sitting here for, basically the runtime of the episode if I tried to go through them. So I will hit some of the highlights here, but especially if you're a fan of Campaign 2, this is an episode you should definitely just watch and skip our recap on it if for whatever reason you missed it. It's worth it. But lots of chaos, like I said, lots of laughs. But the gist here is the parties introduce each other. They catch each other up on basically, what's going on with them. And they talk about their respective missions that they're about to go on. Of note, though, Breus does recognize Jester from his past. If you recall, his backstory included him working at this temple of the Platinum Dragon, the very same one that Jester and Not back in Campaign 2 defaced and vandalized. That was basically the inciting incident for Breus's whole backstory, ruined his life, essentially. So he obviously feels some type of way about running into Jester. And Yasha picks up on this and draws her sword protectively. And Breus and Yasha talk about maybe actually fighting each other to blow off steam, but maybe also because there's some vendettas here. That doesn't actually happen, even though they do talk about it. But Jester does apologize to Breas, and the two actually connect a little bit over their shared love for art. Their conversation also leads to Jester sending a message to Breas's ex-girlfriend, Susie, that left him after that temple incident that ruined his life. So Jester sends a message. It's a bit chaotic, of course, where she, for the most part, kind of talks Breas up, saying how important and strong he is now and how he is going on a very important mission. But Susie basically says that, like, that was a long time ago. I don't know who you are. Like, please stop talking to me, basically. So Jester basically lies to Breas and says that, like, oh yeah, Susie really sounds like she let herself go. Like, you're far better off without her now. And she rolls a nat 20 on that deception check. So Breas pretty much buys it. Other than that, Caleb is fascinated by Ashton's head, of course. So they have a quick chat about that, and I'm sure he wants to dive into it more should he get the opportunity. But they ultimately talk about their generic plan for what they are going to do. Should they go to Ruidus tonight? Should they spend the night here and then go tomorrow? But they ultimately decide to go ahead and get to Ruidus and then probably just sleep in Caleb's tower once they're there. So they head to the lake in order to go through the portal to Ruidus, and Maeve and Lita, Orm's family members, if you don't recall, are there to send them off, along with the druids who are basically parting the lake water in order for them not to have to swim down to the portal. So they all go through, and then they're traveling in the basically tunnels on Ruidus on the other side when they decide to just teleport to the shop in Cravirus just to go ahead and get there, because Bell's Hells provides Caleb with like a tuning fork, essentially like an item from that shop, so that he could attune and teleport half the party there while the other half teleports with Chetney using Ludinus's staff. So they do that. Imogen does send a message beforehand to the crew at the store to let them know they're on the way, but they do that. They teleport successfully to the basement, and then Caleb casts his tower. Excuse me. So he casts the tower, and everyone walks in. Bell's Hells are, of course, taken aback by this crazy structure that they find themselves in. And again, this is just an incredible episode with so many little moments. But essentially what happens is we have Jester and Caduceus put together a meal. I don't know if it's Heroes Feast specifically, but it's something along those lines so that they can all get those bonuses to set them up for the potential battles the next day. Meanwhile, Dorian and Yasha are playing some tunes together because Caleb provides a piano in the tower for Dorian to play, and Yasha plays her harp. And they play a song called The Alabaster Baby. And we also get some great little moments here where cast members are literally talking to themselves. Like, we get a great moment between Orm and Caleb where Caleb is encouraging Orm to reach out to his friends for support. Like, he doesn't have to do this alone. There's also a really funny moment with Sam between Breas and Veth where she kind of is hitting on him, and he's like, "Are you in an open relationship?" And she's like, "No." And that ultimately nothing happens. But again, too many moments to even count that are just fantastic. But ultimately, they finish the cooking. Everyone eats this feast. They get the benefit of 7 extra points of HP, immunity to poison and the frightened condition, and advantage on all wisdom saves. Caleb also takes this chance to cast Mind Blank on Yasha and himself, which will give them 24 hours of immunity to psychic damage, as well as being charmed by the spell charm and other charm effects and stuff like that. Ashton then asks Yasha and Jester for some dating advice, which is fantastic. And Jester ultimately gives him a copy of Tusk Love to learn from. Jester and Fern go on a little polymorph adventure where they turn themselves into small critters to go explore the cat tunnels of the tower. And they try to get to the top floor where they're not allowed, but they aren't able to. But they do find a way to sneak into Caleb and Veth's lab and just mess around and knock some things over. There is another great moment with Bo and Ford where they have a classic Captain First Mate talk, like back in the Campaign 2 days. And they basically talk about how they're not impressed with Bell's Hells, and it's like they're just picking up anybody these days. Caleb actually has maybe my favorite moment of the entire episode. which is saying something. But he goes and wakes up Chetney to reveal that he is a huge fan of Chetney's work, and that as a child he used to love to go to Rexentrum and just admire his toys through the window because they couldn't afford them back then. But today, now as an adult, he has been able to get some and actually is a collector of his rare works. And because of this, he presents this wooden shield to Chetney and was like, I would be absolutely honored if you would commemorate this meeting of our two teams by engraving this wooden shield with the 9 HELLS. And of course, whatever else he wants to engrave on it. Chetney is, of course, happy to do so. Caleb also reveals his collection of Chetney's works, including one of the 5 rare eggs that we found out about. Fern, of course, tries to steal it, but is unsuccessful. There's also a great conversation between Caduceus and Breus about having a crisis of faith, and Caduceus tries to help, advise him and point him in the right direction. But ultimately, everyone goes to their rooms for the night to get some rest, but Caleb does stop by Imogen and Laudna's room and asks to borrow Imogen for a moment. Laudna does come with her, and the 3 of them go to the highest point of the tower, the one that was locked off earlier. And it's basically like a star projector up there where Caleb has maybe manifested or cast this illusion that basically looks like, stars and galaxies. And basically, as you're moving up there, there's like an after image of your hand where there's like 50 different versions of you. And he's just talking about all of the possibilities that exist and that he doesn't know what's going to happen come tomorrow, but he knows that Imogen is very close to all of this, as a Ruid is born, as the daughter of Liliana, who is up there. And Caleb just says, I know this is going to be incredibly hard for you tomorrow. And, a million different things could happen, but, just be who you need to be. And he tries to encourage her, and it's just a really sweet moment. But then he finishes this by taking an Intuit charge out of his pack, same ones from campaign 2, and says, this was left over from our time, and I think it may be of more use to you guys than us. So he hands that over to Imogen and Laudna for them to use. Then his one final point of thing that happens before they all go to bed is they have Fern try to identify the Raven Queen's mask that she gave them. And she does cast Identify, and Matt says, yeah, it's an item in D&D Beyond. Like, you can just go look it up. But they go look it up, and I haven't seen if anybody has posted this online yet, but from what the players were saying, it's basically an item card in D&D that's written in a language that Matt made up. So they still don't know what it does, even though they identified it, which is really cool. Then finally, I think I already said finally, but there is one more thing. Breus does a painting. He works on his painting of Aurum, both with help from Dorian via inspiration and guidance from Jester. And he gets a 35 total. So the 3 of them are able to whip something really nice up. So then everyone heads to sleep, like I said, but Dorian does go to Aurum's room, get that late night knock, and the 2 kind of share what they mean to each other and spend the night together. And that's where the episode ends. Again, episode 111 of campaign 3, the 9 HELLS. And yeah, like I mentioned before, such a fantastic episode. Definitely one of my favorites of campaign 3. Maybe one of my favorite Critical Role episodes ever, because it was just such a joy to see their joy and just to get all of these crazy interactions between the characters. I've never even been in a campaign that's lasted, much longer than a year. But even I cannot even fathom just how cool it would be to have, past characters getting the chance to interact and actually legitimately RP. So doing that over the span of 10 years, I can only imagine how cool it would be. And it was certainly cool to watch. So yeah, again, if you're watching this recap, we appreciate having you here, but this is definitely one I would recommend you check out yourselves. Because it was just so much fun. And I'm nervous for what happens next. It, definitely feels like the joyous final moment of happiness before things could get really bad and really dark. So we'll have to see. We got one more episode coming up tomorrow before the month, not the month break, but the end of the month break. So I really think things could be gearing up heavy here. I'm still interested to see how Matt is actually going to handle this. Will we get Vox Machina Mighty Nine one-shots like coming up very, very soon, or will we still have some Bells Hells action for a while? Let me know y'all's thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in general, what your favorite moment and what your favorite interaction was. But yeah, unfortunately that's all I got for this one. The good news is that really, aside from just the fun character RP, not really too much happened. So we're not really missing out on too much as far as not being able to have our typical discussion here. So that is good. But maybe Blake and I will still get to talk a little bit during our Friday live stream. So be sure to check that out if you're interested. But that's all I got, y'all. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you guys soon. Bye.